May 31st, 2006. Stockholm, Sweden, 5:31 a.m. A single server hums beneath a teenager's unmade bed, and in exactly 16 minutes, it will become the most wanted machine on the planet. That server is the beating heart of the Pirate Bay. An operation Hollywood claims has drained $30 billion from its vaults. An operation that crippled the music industry's iron grip on global distribution. An operation that laughed openly, defiantly in the face of international copyright law. And now 53 armed officers are breaching the data center doors. They seize every server, every cable, every last piece of humming hardware. This is meant to be the kill shot. By noon, the raid is over. Swedish prosecutors face the cameras, declaring total victory, 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles. Hollywood executives pop champagne corks. The world's most infamous digital empire, used by 25 million people every single day, is finally offline. But 72 hours later, a ghost flickers back to life. The Pirate Bay is online. Its new homepage isn't an apology. It's a declaration of war, a pirate ship, cannons blazing, aimed directly at the iconic Hollywood sign. This wasn't just survival. This was something else entirely. Something that sent a cold chill down the spine of every government official and corporate executive watching. The site had become unkillable. They seized the physical servers. They targeted the founders personally. Yet it rose from the ashes like some digital phoenix. If you can't destroy this, can you really control the internet at all? How did 3 Swedish geeks working from bedrooms and warehouses build a digital hydra that the combined might of Hollywood, Washington, and Stockholm couldn't kill? And what secret did they know that billion-dollar corporations had completely missed? The story begins 5 years earlier. Stockholm, 2001. Gottfrid Svartholm sits cross-legged on his bedroom floor. He's surrounded by a nest of cables snaking from a server humming beneath his bed. He is only 19 years old. Shaggy hair, a permanent, cynical smirk. But those eyes ignite like matches whenever the topic turns to cryptography, online. He calls himself Anakata, a name destined to become both a legend and a curse. By 2003, he's no longer working alone. He joins forces with Fredrik Neij, codenamed Tiamo, and Peter Sunde, known as Brokip. Together, they rig up a simple BitTorrent tracker, just a side project for an activist group called Pirate Byrån. Pirate Byrån is an anti-copyright collective operating out of a Stockholm warehouse. Their mission: make information sharing utterly frictionless. No gatekeepers, no apologies, and absolutely zero tracking logs. Gottfrid's bedroom server becomes the beating heart of this entire experiment. Then the tracker explodes. Growth faster and more ferocious than any of them predicted. By the end of 2004, their little hobby project has a name, the Pirate Bay, and 40,000 users, swapping everything from open source software to Hollywood's biggest blockbusters. Every single torrent, every single hash, all of it flowing through Gottfrid's one machine. The bandwidth bills start climbing. His parents grow uneasy. Fredrik has an idea: they need commercial hosting. Fast. So they launch PRQ. PRQ is a hosting company with one defiant rule: we host anything. We keep zero logs. While competitors fold under legal pressure, PRQ collects takedown notices like trophies. The New York Times would later describe them as highly secure, no questions asked operators, with considerable expertise in withstanding legal attacks. The unspoken message was crystal clear: bring your lawsuits. We dare you. And the world's biggest corporations took the bait. February 2004. Lawyers for DreamWorks send a cease and desist, demanding the removal of torrents for Shrek 2. Gottfrid's reply would become the stuff of internet folklore. Sweden is not a state in the United States of America. He wrote, "For your information, no Swedish law is being violated. It is the opinion of us and our lawyers that you are morons." He then offered some rather colorful anatomical suggestions involving their legal team and some retractable equipment before signing off. Go get stuffed. Polite as usual. Anakata. They weren't just ignoring the giants. They were spitting directly in their eye. The Pirate Bay posts the entire legal exchange on its homepage. The letter doesn't just get attention, it goes viral. Traffic to the site triples. Overnight, every legal threat becomes free advertising for their outlaw brand. By mid-2005, the Pirate Bay commands an audience that fledgling tech startups can only dream of. And this digital empire, it runs on code hammered out by one man, Gottfrid. Working almost entirely alone, his masterpiece, a custom tracker called HyperCube, a program that conducts a symphony of file sharing across millions of computers simultaneously. At its peak, 25 million peers across the globe connect through the Pirate Bay's architecture. That's enough traffic to rank among the internet's top 100 most visited sites. Yet the interface is a mask of simplicity. A search bar, a pirate ship logo, and an endless sea of content. But beneath that simple surface, Gottfrid is engineering something that borders on digital immortality. Each new user makes the network stronger, harder to kill. Every shared file builds another layer of redundancy. This isn't a website anymore. It's a living organism, growing faster than any law can contain it. And in Hollywood, the Motion Picture Association of America watches this explosive growth with cold, mounting fury. Their lawsuits against individual downloaders are failing. They need to strike at the heart. The real target is the infrastructure that makes it all possible. And that infrastructure has a physical address. In Sweden, by early 2006, the battleground is set. MPAA lobbyists begin working diplomatic back channels in Sweden, pressuring officials to take action. A storm of emails flies between Hollywood and Stockholm. Swedish authorities, known for their hands-off approach to internet regulation, start feeling political heat from across the Atlantic. The government has its directive: this problem must be eliminated. May 2006, a vibration, a text. Gottfrid gets a warning from a contact deep within Sweden's telecom industry. Police are mobilizing. He calls Fredrik. They've rehearsed this exact scenario for months. Their disaster recovery plan is elegant in its simplicity. Database backups are already safe, encrypted on servers hidden in the Netherlands. They're poised for immediate deployment. If the primary infrastructure goes down, they can resurrect the Pirate Bay before the Swedish evening news finishes its broadcast. For 2 years, Gottfrid has worked to ensure the site's entire soul can fit on a thumb drive, ready to rise from the ashes anywhere with electricity and bandwidth. Now, at dawn, that preparation faces its ultimate test: 53 armed officers. The raid is imminent. But there's a fatal flaw in the authorities' plan, a detail they don't yet comprehend. They're about to seize metal and wires while the data, the only thing that truly matters, is already speeding toward Amsterdam. How long will it take for police to realize they've stormed an empty castle? And what will Gottfrid do when they finally come for him? May 31st, 2006, 5:47 a.m. A quiet Stockholm suburb. The first door splinters. The raid on the Pirate Bay's primary servers has begun. Officers move in tactical, synchronized teams. 10 separate locations breached at the exact same moment. Inside the server room, controlled chaos. Metal racks unplugged mid-operation. Blinking lights going dark. Hard drives pulled and slid into evidence bags. Technicians stand motionless. Hands raised. They watch police haul equipment out on wheeled dollies. Gottfrid and Fredrik are found, cuffed, and taken to separate interrogation rooms. By 11 a.m., Swedish television is broadcasting breaking news to the nation. Notorious piracy website shut down. A police spokesperson faces cameras, declaring they've dismantled a major criminal operation. On internet forums worldwide, panic spreads. But in Stockholm, hundreds rally in Mentor Square. They're waving pirate flags. A unified chant echoes off buildings, "Free the Bay," to the world. It looks like Hollywood just scored a decisive knockout. The Pirate Bay's URL is dead, returning only error messages. In Hollywood, the MPAA declares victory. Statements congratulate Swedish authorities. They celebrate a decisive blow against digital theft, already calculating recaptured revenue. But in the digital underground, a different calculation is being made. June 2nd, 2006. Midnight. A whisper becomes a roar. It's back. Across the globe, Users hit refresh. The homepage loads. The iconic pirate ship is there, but with a defiant new detail. It's firing cannons directly at a Hollywood sign. And beneath it, a new slogan, the galaxy's most resilient BitTorrent site. In the chaos of the raid, Gottfrid's team moved like ghosts. Their contingency plan triggered perfectly. They migrated the entire database to new servers in Amsterdam, rerouted the DNS, brought the beast back to life in just 72 hours. Police had the hardware, the empty metal boxes, but the soul of the machine, the code, the community was already somewhere else. Peter Sunde, the site's charismatic public face, calls a press conference from his cramped Stockholm apartment. Reporters lean in, focused on his laptop screen. He's grinning. The downtime wasn't because we were scared, he says. We were just upgrading our infrastructure to handle all the new traffic you journalists sent us. It wasn't a boast. It was a fact. The raid had become the single greatest advertising campaign in the Pirate Bay's history. Traffic didn't just grow, it detonated. Doubled. Then tripled the pre-raid numbers. The site now crashed from sheer popularity, not from police action. Gottfrid and Fredrik pulled 20-hour shifts, fighting just to keep the servers from melting. The entertainment industry had tried to slay the dragon. Instead, they made it breathe fire. Behind the scenes, the operation was hardening. Multiple mirror sites blinked into existence across Europe and Asia. The code base was rebuilt, modularized, now designed to deploy on any server, in any country. Within hours, they sent encrypted backup copies to trusted allies in 6 different nations. When a Swedish journalist asked how they could possibly survive another raid, Fredrik's answer was cold and immediate. We have plans in other countries. We're not stupid. The swagger was earned. They were treating international law enforcement as just another network error to route around. Humiliated, Swedish prosecutors doubled down. They began meticulously combing through seized hard drives, desperate to build a criminal case. Meanwhile, the Pirate Bay posted the actual police warrant on their homepage, complete with sarcastic notes scrawled in the margins. LOL. Good luck with that. And another, try harder. The trolling was masterful. Users responded with a flood of donations. Traffic surged to 30 million visits a day. The project that began under Gottfrid's bed now ran on global infrastructure spanning 3 continents. The raid was meant to be an execution. It had become a resurrection. In Los Angeles, New York, and London, corporate executives were furious. If police of a sovereign nation couldn't keep one website down for even 3 days, what did that mean for their control over the internet itself? Boardrooms filled with legal teams, all drafting new battle plans. Political pressure intensified. New, harsher laws proposed. The hunters were regrouping for another attack. But this time, they weren't aiming for the servers. They were aiming for the men. A trial was coming, one that would decide more than the fate of 3 Swedish geeks. It would be a test. Could the old world's rules of ownership survive in the new world of decentralized information? The Pirate Bay had survived the raid. But now they faced an enemy they couldn't simply outmaneuver with code. They faced a courtroom, a system designed to make an example of them. Could a hacker's logic ever win against a lawyer's law? But what happens when the system tries to imprison an idea? February 16th, 2009. The Stockholm District Court. 4 men faced the machine. Gottfrid Svartholm, a pale smirk playing on his lips. Fredrik Neij, arms folded in defiance. Peter Sunde, live tweeting the spectacle to the world. And Carl Lundstrom, the elder statesman who paid to launch the rebellion. The state called it a trial. They called it the spectacle, a show designed to make an example of them. They looked less like criminals, more like a band arriving for a sound check. The prosecution's story was simple. These were criminal masterminds, architects of digital chaos, profiting from millions of copyright violations. The defense had a simpler story. The Pirate Bay broke no Swedish laws. It was a map, not a destination. An index, not a host. They held no files, only magnet links and a tracker. Outside, protesters in pirate hats roared. Inside, every seat was filled. World media from 30 countries watched as the fight became a war of philosophy. A prosecutor tried to explain BitTorrent technology. He failed so spectacularly that Gottfrid, from the defendant's chair, had to interrupt and correct him. Laughter echoed through the courtroom. Goliath had just tripped over its own feet. Corporate lawyers unveiled charts showing billions in damages. In response, letters from users flooded the court telling a different story. A story of access to documentaries, textbooks, rare films that culture had forgotten. The judge pressed on profit, on motive. The defense calmly explained ad revenue barely kept the servers online. Peter Sunde blogged every word, turning courtroom drama into a daily serial for his 100,000 followers. Then came April 17, 2009, Judgment Day. The room was electric. The judge began to read. Guilty. On all counts, the sentence 1 year in prison for each man, and a fine of 30 million Swedish kroner, nearly $3.6 million. The message was clear. This was a warning. Within minutes, the Pirate Bay's famous logo was replaced. A defiant phoenix, rising from the ashes of the verdict, a symbol of silent protest against what they saw as corporate censorship. Peter Sunde told reporters the verdict was bizarre, a meaningless punishment for a crime with no victims. But Gottfrid wasn't even there to hear it. His absence was a sign of things to come. Appeals started instantly. Under Swedish law, nothing was final. Not yet. November 2010. The appeals court speaks. The ruling is a paradox. Prison sentences slightly cut, but damages exploded to 46 million kronor, over $7 million. An impossible number, a crushing weight. You can't squeeze blood from a stone. Sunde wrote on his blog, he vowed not a single krona would be paid. In 2011, the final door slammed shut. The Supreme Court refused to hear the case. Sentences were now final. The system moved to collect its dues. But when they came for the defendants, one was missing. Gottfrid Svartholm had vanished. The official story was illness. The unofficial story, whispered in media, was that he had fled to Cambodia. Fredrik Neij left for Laos. Peter Sunde, ever the showman, went on a farewell tour before turning himself in. He spoke at hacker conferences. One last stand. Carl Lundström served his short sentence under house arrest. But Gottfrid, the architect, the original coder, the ghost who built the machine, had gone completely dark. Interpol Red notices flash across the globe. A ghost is being hunted. Swedish diplomats contact governments across Southeast Asia in hushed tones. But how do you catch a phantom? A man living inside encrypted channels. Flitting between nations with no extradition treaties, months bleed into one another. Then a whisper, a sighting. A Swedish expat reports seeing Gottfrid in a Phnom Penh internet cafe. A silhouette hunched over a laptop. The machine, a ThinkPad. The mission unknown. WikiLeaks would later confirm Svartholm helped forge the infrastructure for their explosive 2010 cable leaks. An observer noted, he's living exactly like the ideology he coded. Stateless, mobile, impossible to pin down. But the machine he built, the Pirate Bay, refused to die with its masters. In 2012, it underwent a radical metamorphosis. It shed its skin, abandoning torrent files completely. It evolved. Embracing magnet links. A torrent file was a body, a physical target authorities could seize. But a magnet link, it's just text. A simple hash. It's an idea, and you can't put an equation in handcuffs. No torrent files meant fewer vulnerabilities, more resilience. The site's blog declared a new era. The Pirate Bay was now leaner, faster, and almost impossible to kill. Then came the masterstroke. They released a compressed backup of the entire site. A mere few gigabytes. Anyone could download it. Anyone could create a perfect clone in minutes. The Bay was no longer a place, it was a self-replicating organism, designed to survive a digital apocalypse. By late 2011, the numbers were staggering. Traffic hit record highs. The convictions had changed nothing. The raids were a failure. To millions of users, the legal drama was just noise, a story happening in some distant, parallel universe. Gottfrid's creation had outgrown its creator. It no longer needed him to survive. But as his digital child thrived, Gottfrid's own story was spiraling into darkness. The Swedish government wasn't done with him. And just across the water, the Danes were waiting their turn. New charges were being drafted, charges that made copyright infringement look like a parking ticket. This was about government databases, stolen identities, allegations that would reframe Gottfrid Svartholm from digital rebel to national security threat. And in a sweltering apartment in Cambodia, a fugitive hears footsteps in the hall. For 18 months, law enforcement chased his shadow across Southeast Asia. Now they'd closed the distance. The hunt was over. But as they prepared to kick down the door, one question remained: what secrets were hiding on his laptop? And were the charges waiting in Sweden just the beginning of his nightmare? August 30th, 2012. Phnom Penh, Cambodia. A joint task force storms a waterfront apartment. Swedish agents, Cambodian police. Moving in unison, the door splinters open. Inside, a scene of digital obsession. A bearded 27-year-old, illuminated by laptop screen, surrounded by a fortress of empty energy drink cans. Gottfrid Svartholm is arrested. There is no resistance. Within 72 hours, he's shackled and on a plane heading back to Stockholm. An urgent deportation, courtesy of the Swedish government. The pirate king who dodged justice for 16 months was finally caged, set to serve his 1-year Pirate Bay sentence. But for Swedish prosecutors, this was just the opening act. They suspected his time on the run wasn't just about hiding. It was about hacking. New charges landed before the ink on his prison intake forms was dry. Unauthorized access to government databases. Attempted bank fraud. Investigators alleged that between 2010 and 2012, while Gottfrid was a fugitive, supposedly laying low, his computers were waging a secret war. They had breached the servers of a company called Logica. Logica wasn't just any company. It was the IT contractor for Sweden's entire tax authority. The breach wasn't small, it was a direct assault on the state, accessing national tax IDs of thousands of Swedes, attempting to issue fraudulent driver's licenses. But that was just the start. Evidence pointed to something far more sinister, an attempt to penetrate Nordea bank systems, to initiate unauthorized transfers. The entire narrative was being rewritten. Gottfrid was no longer a copyright rebel. He was a black hat hacker, a threat to the nation's financial infrastructure. Gottfrid denied it all. His defense was a wall of cold, technical facts. His laptop, he claimed, was a ghost ship compromised and used as a proxy by unknown forces. I was a puppet, he told his lawyer. His team presented forensic proof malware buried deep in the machine's code. Evidence of a remote hand on the controls while he was in Cambodia. It was a plausible story. Security researchers independently confirmed his system was, in fact, infected. But prosecutors fired back. He was a mastermind. They argued sophisticated enough to stage the entire infection himself. The 2013 trial was a war of code. Dense, technical, and it left the court divided. The Swedish verdict was split. Guilty of hacking into Logica systems, guilty of accessing confidential government data, but the Nordea Bank charges insufficient evidence. Dismissed. A small victory in a losing war, the sentence landed hard: 2 years in prison, later knocked down to 1 on appeal. But there was a crucial detail. The judgment acknowledged his computer had been compromised by external actors, yet in a stunning contradiction, the court ruled he still bore full responsibility. How could both be true? As he began his time inside a Swedish prison, a new front in his war was opening. Another country was building its own case. Denmark had been quietly investigating a catastrophic hack of its own. In 2012, an intruder breached the firewalls of CSC. CSC was no small target. A massive IT contractor, the digital guardian of Danish police databases and social security systems, the digital ghost had stolen personal identification numbers belonging to millions of Danish citizens, walked through the most sensitive law enforcement records, one of the most devastating cybersecurity breaches in Scandinavian history. And as Danish investigators sifted through the digital ashes, they found familiar fingerprints, chat logs pointing to one alias, Anakata. In late 2013, just as Gottfrid was finishing his Swedish sentence, the trap was set. Denmark requested his extradition. He was moved from one cell directly to another in Copenhagen, thrown into the silence of solitary confinement. The Danish trial, October 2014, was brutal and unforgiving. Prosecutors detailed a 6-month digital siege on CSC's mainframes. His defense countered with the same story, the evil twin theory. The real person behind those IRC chat handles, the architect of the crime, wasn't Gottfrid at all. His co-defendant, a 21-year-old Danish hacker, testified he had met the true Anakata, and it was not Svartholm. A high-stakes, desperate gamble. They were claiming a phantom had hijacked Gottfrid's digital identity, his equipment, his entire life, to commit the crime. The jury didn't buy it. The forensic evidence was an iron cage. Stolen CSC data found on his drives, access patterns perfectly matching his known equipment, and the chat logs filled with his distinctive, unmistakable phrasing. October 27, 2014. The verdict came down. Guilty. The sentence was crushing 3.5 years in prison, the harshest hacking sentence in the history of Denmark. And his co-defendant, cast as a minor accomplice, he received a lenient sentence and walked free with time served. The ultimate irony. Gottfrid heard the verdict. His face, a stone mask. 3 years of running, 2 trials, multiple convictions. It had finally drained the fight from his eyes. September 2015. A thin, hardened Gottfrid walks out of a Danish prison. Denmark moves to deport him immediately. But on the prison steps, another authority waits. Swedish police rearrest him for a final 1-month sentence. The system would not let him go, just red tape. The final bureaucratic ghost of his hacking convictions. December 2015. Every debt is paid. He walks through the prison gates a free man. His mother waiting for him. He tells the press he has one simple desire after 3 years in a cage, to sit at a keyboard again. Gottfrid had lived the complete hacker saga. The creation, the glory, the exile, the conviction, the prison cell, and the release. In the Pirate Bay, it was still online, still pushing torrents from servers in untouchable locations, run by faceless admins and the movement's true believers. The site had weathered every storm, multiple raids, dozens of domain seizures, and the jailing of all 3 founders. It wasn't the titan it once was. A new era of streaming services and scattered file sharing had redrawn the map. But type in the URL, and there it is, or one of its countless proxies. Still sailing the digital seas. The Pirate Bay was a brutal lesson. You can't kill something that has no head. But some people never learn. The year is 2011. A cybersecurity executive named Aaron Barr boasts that he's cracked the code. He believes he can unmask Anonymous, another faceless, leaderless force that had already brought corporations and governments to their knees. Barr was so sure. He went public with his plan. He would expose the command structure of Anonymous, prove they were mortal, sell that intelligence to the FBI. He had the names. He had the evidence. He had the plan. What he didn't have, a clue about the war he had just declared. Within 72 hours, Anonymous struck back with a fury that made the Pirate Bay raids look tame. They didn't just hack his company, HB Gary. They tore down everything Barr had built piece by humiliating piece. If you want to witness what happens when one man tries to fight the internet itself, watch our investigation into the hacker who tried to unmask Anonymous. Because in the digital wilderness, the hunter can very quickly become the hunted.